We're going to call up Representative Wright, House Bill 616. Ms. Williams.
Mr. Chairman, members, House Bill 616 by Representative Wright authorizes the Port of New Orleans to utilize public-private partnerships for certain projects. And we do have an amendment in the form of a substitute bill.
How's it going, gentlemen? Ready to roll? Stop meeting like this.
As a reminder, we do have quite a few cards, and so we're going to implement the 3-minute rule as Vice Chairman Fontenot motioned for previously. We debated this bill, I think, for quite some time a couple of weeks ago, and I think there were some gaps of information from either side. And so over the last couple of weeks, I imagine y'all have had some back and forth, and now we have an amendment in the form of a substitute bill. Chairman Wright, would you want us to introduce and adopt the substitute bill prior to beginning debate?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. I think that's the way to go.
Okay, Ms. Williams.
Mr. Chairman, members, before you is the amendment to House Bill 616 in the form of a sub-bill. The actual amendment is in your folder and available online. It's identified as 2586. For purposes of committee discussion, we'll be using a substitute bill relative to the St. Bernard Transportation Corridor Roadway to provide for purposes of the St. Bernard Transportation Corridor Roadway to designate powers and duties to the board, to provide for the establishment, design, construction, and financing of the St. Bernard Transportation Corridor Roadway, to provide coordination with the Department of Transportation and Development and the Port of New Orleans to establish supplemental powers and authority. This is what the bill does.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. On your substitute, Chairman Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, just quick update, since last time after that hearing and, pushing it aside. So I had a conversation with a few people in the St. Bernard area, including the Chief Administrative Officer, a member of the council. I know in talking with the Port of New Orleans, which is the most important entity as far as we're concerned on it, they have had a number of meetings, conversations about things. So what it's resulted in is an amendment from DOTD. That's essentially the substitute bill. There's some changes there. We went with the substitute bill option, but those were produced by conversations with DOTD and such. The only other thing I'll add to it since then, you might have seen in the news this weekend, but the governor has appointed GNO Inc. President Michael Hecht as his point person for this project. I really applaud it, and I look forward to it. His latest work with the Super Bowl was incredible. I think everybody agrees, and so looking forward to having someone like that kind of help shepherd this and get this done. So I'd like to turn it over to the gentleman with me. So Mr. Thomas is chair of the board of the Port of New Orleans Board of Commissioners, and then Mr. Kane is also representing the port.
Please introduce yourself for the record, whoever wishes to go first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. My name is Chris Kane. I'm outside legal counsel for the Port of New Orleans. When we came before you a couple weeks ago, the bill that we presented, we intended to be the best in practice P3 legislation. There was a lot of legal experts and P3 experts that assisted us in that process. We listened very carefully. We worked extensively with Senator Donahue. I believe he's here. I'd like to thank him because he spent a lot of his time with myself and Mr. Escajay on Secretary.
Just making sure we're on the same page.
I'm sorry. I apologize. Secretary Donahue.
He might want that. He might want that elevation promotion, but we're going to hold off on that.
Secretary
just for now.
Donahue. Well, I spent a lot of time with him. He became my law school professor in this process. We also spent a lot of time with the St. Bernard Parish Administration and other key stakeholders. The goal was to present to you the bill that's before you is streamlined. It's more than half of what we presented before. I think we were at less than 6 pages before. It was well over 13. This proposed bill, as I mentioned, is a rewrite, but it goes back to it's still the fundamental function of what we're here for. The St. Bernard Parish Council back in 2022, when we submitted the application for our permits, specifically asked, and I quote, signed by the entire council and the parish president, A new north-south corridor for truck and rail traffic generated by this facility, separate from any of the parish's existing roadways, must be completed before operation of the proposed facility. That is why we are here. On August 21st, 2023, at the time, President McGinnis offered a letter to Secretary Buttigieg in support of the ports project, and specifically this road, when he stated, "This project has been shaped by extensive public engagement with key stakeholders and the public to address community concerns and maximize community-facing benefits. In addition, the terminal project continues to benefit St. Bernard Parish as it catalyzes other much-needed infrastructure improvements like the St. Bernard Transportation Corridor, a long-imagined third artery in and out of the parish, which mitigates terminal traffic throughout the parish." So the bill before you, working with Secretary Donahue and the parish administration, tightens the language. It ensures that this bill is related solely to the St. Bernard Transportation Corridor. It tightens the language to ensure that the expropriation language is not an expansion of rights or expansion of any special procedures, which was a concern raised before. It also ensures that there is the likelihood for a local road alternative. This was important to the locals we spoke to, that it wasn't just going to be commercial traffic. It also, in the fourth point, which was requested, is to make sure that the bill provided that DOTD and St. Bernard Parish would have input on the final design and local and state infrastructure and future development as it relates to the impact of this corridor. So we think this bill is much improved, and we ask for your passage today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, the board is clear. Well, ma'am?
Mr. Chair, can we go with Mr. Thomas first before we
Oh,
take
go
questions?
ahead.
Thank you.
Your question is for Mr. Kane or Mr. Thomas?
Yes, sir. You mentioned that it was.
We're gonna allow Mr. Thomas to go ahead and make his comments first. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Michael Thomas. I'm the chairman of the Port of New Orleans Board of Commissioners. I was appointed by the governor back in September. It's been a pretty arduous learning curve since then, especially with this project. I'd like to encourage everyone to realize this is not about lit. This is about the road. This is about the St. Bernard Transportation Corridor. Okay, this is something that we don't want to have happen again like we saw in the airport. Okay, this road needs to be built in conjunction with lit. We need to make sure that this facility is up and running so that we don't impede and harm the citizens of St. Bernard Parish. And that is something that administration is adamantly trying to have happen here. And that's why we work with DOTD to come up with this amendment. Okay. This is something that we've taken your comments on House Bill 660 and say ante up. This is no cost to the state of Louisiana. This is a P3 partnership. We heard the state loud and clear that we have to be inventive on how we're going to get this done. Okay, this is going to be something that's going to be turned over to the state in over 50 years, and the truckers, believe it or not, are going to pay for it. So we're not asking for money. We're asking for the ability to go out and have a partnership so that the people who use this port are able to pay for it. Okay. Since your last meeting, I've had conversations with several parish leaders and explained to them the exact details, because there's so much misinformation out there. We need to make sure that everyone's on the same page. Maybe that's something that has been done incorrectly in the past, but we're here to change that. Okay? This is not an expropriation of parish land. This is not a taking. This is something that's trying to help the citizens of St. Bernard Parish to relieve traffic, to provide added hurricane evacuation routes, to provide a way for first responders to get to that parish in a time of need. Okay? And again, have somebody else pay for it. And what Mr. Kane said is, I want everybody to understand, they were in favor of this. This was a demand to them, to the administration. We must have this road at all cost. And we heard them. And this is what we're trying to do. So it's somewhat confusing to me when we've gone above and beyond to try to build this road at no cost to the parish, at no cost to the state, but yet they're in opposition. We're here to ask for your support so that we may improve this parish, not harm it. We have community leaders that are here in support. We have state leaders that are here in support, and we ask for your support.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Representative Phelps.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You elaborated a little bit on DOTD's amendment. And I haven't read your substitute bill in its entirety. What's the difference there with the DOTD amendment and the change that you made from last time, other than the page numbers?
Yes, thank you, Representative. So in working with Secretary Donahue and the St. Bernard administration, what we did was we narrowed areas where there was concern about expropriation language specifically being overreaching. And our goal was to make sure that we limited it. We made sure that the bill was limited and stripped of any potential ambiguities that went beyond the St. Bernard transportation corridor.
Example.
Specifically, if you read the beginning title, it specifically says in Section 51, the purpose of the bill is specifically related to the St. Bernard Transportation Corridor roadway. And throughout the bill, previously, the reason why it's a replacement bill is because the Secretary literally rewrote the bill. So to give a red line version is non-existent. If you go through this bill, you will see references specifically to the St. Bernard Transportation Corridor, and all the powers related to it are related only to this road. And that was the goal of it. The other goal was, in working with the locals, was to make sure that there was coordination. There was a concern that there would be a road built, and it wasn't related to the Regional Planning Commission study, which is supposed to come out, we believe, this week. There was some discussion about it coming out last week. It's out of our control. I don't know why it was postponed, but it is supposed to come out this week. We have with us examples from that study, from the process of that study, of the potential alternative routes. But to be clear, this bill is specific to the Regional Planning Commission study and to make sure that we have coordination with DOTD and the locals in the implementation of this P3 project. That's what this bill does.
Okay, and this is just the first part, because there's a bigger picture, right? I mean, the road is going to lead somewhere eventually, correct? That was the big concern of the big picture last meeting. Would you agree?
Representative, the road is going to be consistent with the Regional Planning Commission study. So I'm not sure. I may be misunderstanding your question. I
know there's talk about the road, and I know some of us knew that at the beginning. It is just the road at this particular time.
That's all this bill was intended to begin with. There was some concerns raised. We believe that they were not related to the bill, but if you look at this bill, there's no doubt this bill is only related to the road.
But not, okay, I mean, cut you off, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
But again, like I said, there's a bigger picture, and the road will lead to the rest of the project. Am I understanding that correct?
The road is going to go, will lead from the Louisiana International Terminal to the Louisiana Highway System, which will be obviously coordinated with DOTD. It's required, in fact, in the bill specifically by language and by statute, that we coordinate with DOTD.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Phelps. Vice Chairman Fontenot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to start on page 2 of 6, subsection number 3. It specifically talks that this commission will be able to accept any appropriations, donations, grant. Are you referencing state dollars, or there was some testimony that you're not going to use any government dollars to build anything? Chairman Wright?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to catch up with you real quick.
Go to the last paragraph on 2 of 6, number 3, accept any appropriation, donation, grant.
Yeah, okay, so
I'm questioning, why do we have the word appropriation if we're not going to appropriate any state dollars there?
my understanding, I'll let some others speak, is that you need to have that in there just to, if there's a situation that arose, to have it. That, as far as I'm concerned, there's no need or intention to go get more appropriations right now. So this is more like you got to catch it. That's what I would understand.
Yeah, and Representative, we have been able to secure from the federal government funds that are going to be that will come down to DOTD and specifically to St. Bernard Parish for this corridor. So that's the contemplated purpose of the language, and it's pretty standard language from a standpoint of a P3 project. While it may not be state money, but if we can pull down federal money or potentially federal grant funding to lower the tolls or lower the term, it's a discussion for later. We want to be able to have that ability, but we're not asking for any state dollars at this time.
Let's go to lowering the term lowering the tolls, I want to bring you to page 3, subsection B. I think this body's only approved 2 P3 contracts so far, one of which is in Representative Bro's area, and it seems to be extremely controversial. The last sentence says the enactment of this subpart shall be deemed to constitute prior legislative approval as contemplated in RS 48-942. Is that saying that you will not come back to this body to seek approval in any P3 contract that may or may not include tolls?
That's the intention, yes.
All right. So that seems to be an issue that needs to be addressed. If we go to page 4 of 6, subsection D, it says nothing in this subpart shall preclude the board from transferring the St. Bernard Transportation Corridor Transportation to the Department of Transportation, and it goes on to talk about design and access. So basically this bill would give you the holistic authority to create a road, set a toll, and then give it back to the state of Louisiana to deal with those issues. Is that correct?
So the way it would work is that at the end of the term of the concession agreement, the state will have the option, not the requirement. DOTD will have the option to accept the asset, whatever value that will be at the time, and under the concession agreement, the P3 toll facility will have to be turned over in a working top quality, acceptable quality of a facility. They can't just turn it over as a ruined asset. So the state will have an option at whatever term that the concession agreement ends to accept this asset. If they don't, then the Port of New Orleans will continue to maintain it or extend the concession agreement or whatever will happen at that point in time in the future under the concession agreement. That's how the P3 structure works, not just here, but that's how it works throughout the United States in public-private partnership type agreements.
In some of those P3s, and I'm probably running out of time, in some of those P3s, we set the amount of the toll that's going to pay the bond debt service. And when the tolls increase greater than the bond debt service, those funds are reallocated to local governments. In Representative Bro's area, he's argued about the tolls for his locals. So I guess I'm concerned that we're taking away the power of this body to review P3s and understand if you create more revenue than's projected, who's going to get that revenue? Are you going to send that revenue to the port? Are you going to send it to St. Bernard? Or are you going to send it back to the state? Without the authority of this body, I think this is the first P3 that would circumvent this body now to create the P3.
Well, to answer your question on what you're referring to in P3 land is windfall payments. If there was excess tolls, what happens to those toll dollars? The intent of this project is completely different than Representative Bro in the form that most of the folks who are using his bridge are locals and local residents. This is a commercial corridor. This is going to be paid for largely by commercial traffic, and the objective is going to be to pay down the tolls with any excess revenue to reduce the toll amount and or the term of the agreement. So it's a better commercial situation for the truck drivers that we were talking about earlier who are paying an arm and a leg. We want to pay that down. There's no additional revenue that's anticipated to go to the Port of New Orleans. It's going to go into their pocket from these toll revenues. It's going to go into the commercial operation of the toll facility so we can get the P3 concession air out of the equation or have better business terms in the long run. That's the objective.
But that objective is not specifically dictated in the bill. That's your goal to achieve in a contractual agreement, correct?
That's correct. So in order to attract the best possible private equity firms, which is the goal, which that's going to get us the best toll structure possible, we want to have legislation that enables to do that, and we believe this legislation does that and does not confine us in a way that's going to be less attractive in a market. Very candidly, Louisiana is not known for being a hotbed for P3 projects. We just aren't, and we need to change that, and this project, in our view, does just that.
That's all the questions I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Representative Shamahorn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Go a little bit deeper on the over-collection. You said you would be paying down, and I understand the investment dollars that would be coming into Louisiana to build this infrastructure would be tremendous. and they all expect a profit off of it. But in your contract, it doesn't state like the limits of profit. So, like Representative Fontenot was saying, if you double collected what you anticipated after year 4 or 5, we understand whenever you first start it's not going to, but as it progresses, is it possible to pay this all down in debt like the Calcasieu River Bridge? You know, that is in their P3 to apply that to the rates, you know, to get a reduced rate sooner. And my question, I guess, is there a possibility of adding into this a profit margin so that the truckers are not just overcharged and the money walks out of Louisiana? Because the people that are investing to build these P3s are not Louisiana residents, okay? They're from around the world with big pockets of money, and you know, they don't pay our state tax and they don't pay our sales tax in ours. So, and is there a possibility to be able to put some kind of a percentage limits to guarantee that they're not overcharged year after year?
Yeah, Representative, that is going to be spelled out in the concession agreement and delivered through the RFP process. You're going to hear, I believe, here shortly from trucking companies, owners, and folks in the economic development arena who are going to talk about the project as a whole. I could tell you that from the Port of New Orleans' perspective, we're going to want a concession agreement that delivers commercial outcomes to drive containers to the Port of New Orleans, which is not going to be to have the highest tolls possible. We're going to want the lowest tolls for the shortest period of time to drive as much traffic as we can to the Port of New Orleans. There's an alignment and interest in doing that. I understand your perspective, but to put in this bill those sorts of parameters would be unusual, and I think would kind of handcuff us from getting the best deal we possibly can as we go through the process. So
Okay.
I think you're spot on as to what we're trying to accomplish, and I think the way to do that is going to be through the concessionaire agreement process and the RFP process, which again will be a public process as well. We're just not there yet. This is just kind of the first step in that equation.
Okay. Also, are there perimeters set in place, and I'll get with the Secretary here in a minute with this, but a 50-year elevated road is pulling the weight that it's going to be pulling, you know, having on it, is going to be pretty detrimental to the lifespan of that facility. And 50 years is a long time. That's about the lifetime of an average bridge. So we're guaranteed that whenever DOTD does take it over, that it's going to be in top-notch shape, or is it going to be falling apart or needed repairs to bring it back up to standard?
The concession agreement itself will require for the maintenance of the asset. So the private equity partner is going to be required to maintain the project, which means not state dollars, right? It's going to be on the P3 partner and through the concessionaire agreement. And again, I remind you that the way the bill is structured and the discussions with DOTD cannot commit today to take the asset over due to other federal regulations that Secretary Donahue can discuss, but they will have the option to do so. So it's not obligated to. If it does not at the end of the term, then the Port of New Orleans is going to be the other partner in that concession agreement and will be responsible to deal with it at that point in time. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Shammer-Horn. Representative Brew. I will remind the members that we have quite a few cards, both speaking in support and opposition, so we may have other questions that get addressed as we go.
I'll take the hint to be short or brief and not talk about Belle Chase. But we will in a roundabout way. So just let me understand this. So this is different than Belle Chase in the sense that this bill that we passed today allows PONO to just go out and do the P3. It will not come back to us as legislators.
The way that this is structured is similar to the language we believe that the Louisiana Transportation Authority currently has to do unsolicited or solicited P3 proposals. The Bell Chase project was, not to be too policy wonky about it, but was completely different in the fact that it was a DOTD-driven process. I was very involved,
Right.
as you know, in discussing it with you. And this is intended to be a different process because of the commercial relationship that this corridor is going to have, as requested, as I read to you, by the locals since 2022. And in order to tie those commercial relationships together, the international shipping to the truckers and to develop the roadway, including also still an alternative local route and an emergency route, we believe this is the best and most suited way to do that. So it is structured differently, and it's done so intentionally.
Correct, but just try and get a yes or no answer. So it is different in the sense that this body will not approve the P3 that the Port of New Orleans enters into.
The way that the bill is currently written, the concession agreement would not come back before this committee or the Joint Transportation Committee. However,
so the PONO board would approve the P3.
Yes. However, DOTD is involved in a number of components as represented in the bill, as well as St. Bernard Parish is required to be coordinated throughout the bill. But the concession agreement would be a public bid process that would be managed by the Port of New Orleans, as requested, by the way, of this administration for us to do.
I understand. And then what you're telling us today also is that there'll be commercial entities or P3 partners. The one in Bell Chase, mine's from Canada, right? Built a bridge that sunk. But so they'll be interested in not a long, like Bell Chase is set up as a 30-year term, right? So they know they're going to make money for a 30-year period. This, you're telling me that there's commercial interest that'll be happy to come in, build a toll bridge, and hopefully get money back in 5 years, 10 years, or what have you.
Well, we have not proposed a term at this point in time. I think the best way to go to the market is to let the market make proposed terms to us. That's, I believe, the best way to do it. You're not going to pay for a $400 up to $800 million bridge in 5 to 10 years, as you well know.
But I just want to know, there are commercial interests out there that would enter into such a P3 that really don't care about the 30-year time period, would want to get out there in a shorter time period, like a 10 or 15-year period, if the toll is produced.
Potentially. I can tell you that anecdotally, there is a lot of interest in developing this project from the private sector. What exact terms we get, obviously, like I said, the baseline is for us to derive commercial. We're doing this because we need it for a international terminal. So if we don't have commercial terms that are in alignment with that terminal, the whole thing fails.
Right.
So we have to get this right.
Well, do you or does your client know of other P3s that have had that experience where they really, there's an emphasis to try and reduce that toll period as much as possible?
In terms of the number
of the term
years.
of the concession, right?
I mean,
is there an example somewhere else?
In my experience, I can't speak towards every P3 in the country, but I don't believe that you're going to have a concession agreement that calls for a 5 or 10 year out clause. That's what you're really talking about?
Or just the shortest time period at all. Not every. I mean, I know my district doesn't care for a 30-year term.
As a general rule of thumb in P3s, the private sector would generally like the longest term and the highest toll as possible, right? We're going to be on the other side of that negotiating table to make sure that we're bargaining for not just the Port of New Orleans, but for our private partners who have put up $800 million of their money to build the terminal, and also for all of the interests that are going to be moving cargo through that corridor. Mm-hmm. So we're going to be the ones who are negotiating on that end to have the best possible toll structure that delivers for the project. Okay. And that's why I was saying it's so different than the experience that the Bell Chase project delivered. And I'm not,
it's adding a new way in and out, unlike the Bell Chase project, which just decided to repair the existing one-way in and out while we had the world's largest construction project in North America. That's another topic for another day, though. But let me ask you this also. I'm trying to finish up. So you also mentioned coordination with locals, and that's been a big disappointment in Bell Chase with what's going on with us. Just recently, they've announced this toll date now for like 3 months now. They don't know when they're going to start tolls. It's borderline ridiculous, and it creates a lot of stress and anxiety in the community. You mentioned coordination with locals. What's in this bill that will help the locals in St. Bernard coordinate with the Port of New Orleans, who's going to have control, if I understand correctly, of this P3 going through their jurisdiction and being told, and an amount that I guess PONO and its contractor is going to have control over.
I don't want to speak for the parish president and administration who I've been working with. I'd like for them to speak for themselves in terms of the conversations that we've had and the comfort level they have with the bill. But I can point to you specifically that we put language that was requested by the administration that we worked on to make sure that there is coordination as it relates to existing infrastructure, planned infrastructure in the parish, that we have coordination with the locals. Again, the concession agreement and the RFP process itself is with the Port of New Orleans for the reasons we've outlined. But the asset itself that's going to impact the parish is going to require coordination with the locals that I believe is clear in the bill. And I also remind you that the same requirements are going to be required with our engagement with DOTD.
All right. Well, I guess I'll hear from them. And then one last question. You mentioned in your presentation about expropriation. So if I understand what you testified to, it's that expropriation will be for this road and roadway only, not for the terminal itself.
That's correct.
So there's no expropriation that occur for the actual physical terminal, only for the roadway to get there.
The right-of-way to build a roadway. That's correct.
All right. No further questions, Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Breaux. Representative Walters.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Representative Wright, for bringing this bill back. And I must say that I've talked to plenty of people in support. I've talked to plenty of people who were not in support. But if you wanted to talk to me and you sent me an email or called, I did my best to answer the phone. And nevertheless, I wanted to know roads in areas like Galveston. Galveston has an international port. Virginia has an international port as well. The roads, bridges that surround those ports, are they toll? Or were at one point were they toll roads, toll bridges?
I can't speak to any specific, this one or that one, but in my experience, professional over time, yeah, some have it, some don't. And I think it sort of depends on what's like the outlay of the terminal itself to other parts of the highway system.
I can give you one specific example, and we've got a Louisiana trucker who trucks in Baltimore here, who I think is going to speak later, but Baltimore is a prime example.
Okay, and I was just in Baltimore this summer, so I'm familiar with some of their infrastructure. And I must say and put this on record that, I'm from Shreveport, and I wish that we were just trying to build a road to have a project of this magnitude in our area. And so, again, thank you for what you all are bringing to the table today. And I think that, majority of us that sit here today, we have to drive a ways just to get to the Port of New Orleans, and so I do know that Chair Connick, he represents an overlapping, basically what I'm trying to say is with the Port of New Orleans, there are 3 parishes that constitute the Port of New Orleans, right? So, of course, Orleans Parish, Jefferson Parish, St. Bernard Parish. So everybody has a seat at the table. And Representative Wright, you brought a bill last year dealing with a special commission for deep water ports. And Vice Chair Carter mentioned, what about the Port of New Orleans? We want a seat at the table. And I believe this might have been a hearing that we had maybe even in the summertime. And I do know that Mrs. Cormier from DOTD dealing with the multimodal ports mentioned that everybody may not have a seat at the table on this commission, on this board. However, everyone will still have a seat at the table in some way. And so thank you for being dedicated to that and being a man of your word. And at the appropriate time, I would ask that we move this favorable because, we don't want to stall something that can be a game changer for our state, going from, we're just a national state to an international state. And so I believe that Louisiana, our history, alone and what we have contributed to the United States and what we contribute to the world. And this project is another testament of that. And so, again, thank you for being, dedicated to the ports, but also being a man of your word.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Rep. Walters. Nice try, but not so fast, like Lee Corso would say. Okay, gentlemen, the board is clear. If you don't mind giving up the table, we're going to get into cards. The first one we have present, speak in support, Louis Pomes. Give me that. Give me that last name. Pomes. There we go. Secretary Bourgeois, you on standby. As you are coming to the table, I'm going to entertain a motion to adopt the substitute bill 2586 that we have continued to debate. That was Rep. Walters' initial motion to adopt it via substitute. Any objections to adopting the substitute bill? Seeing none, we will adopt that bill via substitute. 3 minutes. Please introduce yourself for the record.
Louis Pomes, St. Bernard Parish President.
My name is Donnie Bourgeois. I'm the CAO of St. Bernard Parish Government.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to speak here today on House Bill 616. I would also like to thank Governor Jeff Landry for his commitment on this very important issue for St. Bernard Parish. If the port comes to St. Bernard Parish, and I'm going to repeat that, if the port comes to St. Bernard Parish, this transportation corridor is absolutely vital to the infrastructure and the safety of the residents of St. Bernard Parish. This has been one of the main concerns in regard to the port coming to St. Bernard Parish. The St. Bernard Council passed a resolution in 2022 in support of the road. I have a copy to submit for the record. Our administration and I have been working tirelessly to address the concerns we had with the original bill. Based on the substitute bill presented today, we feel that some insurance has been put into place to ease the minds of the residents of St. Bernard Parish. With this substitute bill in place, combined with the absolute need for a transportation corridor, I can say that I now support House Bill 616, which would allow a critical road to be built at no cost to St. Bernard Parish. And I want to say it, that's if this port comes to St. Bernard Parish. It's critical that this road gets put in place before the first ship docks in St. Bernard Parish. It's critical. The infrastructure we have today is not going to support the truck traffic coming through our roadways. If this transportation corridor is put into place, it will bypass every state highway, every local road, every school zone, and every red light in St. Bernard Parish. This road would have to be put in place from the location of the port directly to LA 47, or even better, directly into the interstate. Until that happens, this port should not be allowed to operate in St. Bernard Parish, and that is only one of our concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bourgeois.
Thank you. I'm going to keep my comments extremely brief, and then I'll waive the rest of my time. So first, I just want to say that this is not a vote for or against the port. And I want to be clear. If the port does come to St. Bernard, this road is extremely vital to our community. Without it, I'm not sure what our parish will look like. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bourgeois. And President Pomes, any questions? Representative Breaux.
President, Mr. Bourgeois, I just want to follow up on some question I was asking Mr. Kane earlier. Are y'all happy with what's in this bill as far as having coordination with the Port of New Orleans for this P3 that may come to your jurisdiction?
Good. What I will say is that it was a pleasure working with Mr. Chris Kane. He did hear a lot of our concerns and addressed them. The bill does say that They shall consult with St. Bernard Parish if there are any connections to our roads or our drainage. So at this point, I do think that we can continue working together.
Okay. Just be forewarned about a P3 and how it works. I'm more than welcome to come to Belle Chase and experience the daily disappointment that we experience over there.
Thank you, Representative Bro. That was only the third time you brought it up today. I'm proud of you. I call that progress in Cameron. Gentlemen, the board is clear. Thank you for your testimony, for being present.
Thank you.
Secretary Bourgeois, with a white card present, would like to speak.
By myself?
Ma'am, for you, absolutely. Especially after me keeping you here for an hour.
No worries.
My apologies. Please introduce yourself for the record.
Susan Bourgeois, Secretary of LED. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. And I would say, first and foremost, I appreciate the Chairman of the Board of the Port's comments about this bill is not about lit, and he is right. And in reality, I'm here because of lit. Right. This is the first time I've had the pleasure of being in front of your committee, and that should speak to the importance of two things. Number one, the project, but number two, this whole of government approach that this administration, including you all, has taken to economic development in Louisiana and changing our outcomes. So I know we all have a 3-minute limit, so I will be brief in my remarks. I'll start by saying this bill is critical to the road. Right, to the road happening. The road is critical to lit happening. So that's my introduction, and frankly, it will be my conclusion as well. When I came into this job, you've all heard me say, I didn't know a lot about economic development. Frankly, I knew a lot about organizational development. I knew a lot about strategic planning, and I knew a lot about people. But I learned very quickly the importance of the Port of New Orleans as it relates to international trade in Louisiana. And I understand the importance of international trade as it relates to economic development in the work that I do. One of the first things the governor asked me to do was serve on the committee to interview for a new leader for the Port of New Orleans. And I went in a little bit blind to that process. And what I will tell you is when we boiled it down and we interviewed at first about 12 finalists, every single one of those people who had been recruited from across this country, working in ports across this country with years and years and years of experience, every single one of those candidates sat at the interview table and spoke to the importance of the LIT project, and not only its importance to the future of the Port of New Orleans, to the future of the economy of the state of Louisiana. 12 experts from all over the country spoke to us. We eventually landed on who I believe was the best candidate. She's here today, Beth Branch, who's done a remarkable job in her very short tenure of positioning the port. This project is critical to that success. So I want to make a few comments about the project, and then I will yield to questions. A lot of you have heard me, everything we do, our bill, all of our work at the department comes under this moniker of positioning Louisiana to win. I will say that LIT is the first and only greenfield port being built in America. And that sends an incredibly strong message to the world about the opportunity for Louisiana, especially around trade. Just some details. LIT will ultimately provide 18,000 new direct and indirect jobs in the greater New Orleans region, $97.3 billion of new industry sales, and over $1 billion in new state tax revenue. Y'all have heard me announce other big, shiny projects, which was that 3 minutes already? Which we're incredibly proud that they have been all over the state. And don't worry, Rep. Walters, we're coming to Shreveport soon. We'll be building a road and a project for y'all there too. But this project, again, it is critical to the success of Louisiana's economy, and this road is critical to this project.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Any questions from the members? Okay.
Great.
Thank you very much for your support and your presence here today and your help across this state.
Thank you.
President wishing to speak, Michael Heck, Greg is that Rusevich?
Yeah, Rusevich.
Hot dog. Y'all just be patient with me. Jack Jensen.
Michael, interesting. Come to the right.
Please introduce yourself for the record.
Good morning, Chairman Booyak. I am Michael Hecht. I'm President and CEO of Greater New Orleans, Inc., economic development organization for Southeast Louisiana. And as you heard from Representative Wright, recently appointed by the governor to help ensure the execution of the Louisiana International Terminal, but most importantly, by balancing the interests and the needs of everybody who is involved to get the best outcome. Let me start by saying that St. Bernard is a parish that has been through so many challenges over the years, the most devastated parish by Hurricane Katrina. But the reality is that determined leadership has rebuilt the parish. Individuals, maybe first and foremost, like Superintendent Voce, who's with us today. And so residents have come back, the schools have come back, housing stock has come back, but business has not come back like it really needs to. The reality is that St. Bernard Parish badly needs a source of tax revenue and jobs for its people now and in the future. And the answer is Louisiana International Terminal. Thanks to the terminal, the parish can expect $27 million in new annual tax revenue within 5 years. It's going to go up to $40 million after 5 years. Y'all, that is going to double the annual tax revenue to the parish. It's a total game changer in terms of being able to pay for schools and fire and safety and sewers. Furthermore, it's going to bring over 2,000 new well-paying jobs after 5 years and over 4,300 when it's at full capacity. So, again, game changer, overused, but I think in this case, it changes the game, and it's probably the only game. The impact for the region, which we represent in Greater New Orleans, the 10 parishes, is equally impressive. At full capacity, over $55 million in annual new tax revenue and nearly 12,000 new jobs. Very importantly, it's absolutely going to be St. Bernard, but it's also going to be New Orleans East. It's also going to be St. Tammany. It's also going to be Tangipahoa. And then when you look at the whole state and all of the manufacturing centers and logistics centers, the advanced manufacturing, total impact of over $80 million per year and close to 19,000 jobs. And in fact, we have a letter, which I believe is going to be submitted, which has been signed by business organizations from around the state, including Shreveport and Lafayette and Baton Rouge, and of course St. Bernard, all in support of this project. I want to just make it very clear that when we talk about these impacts, sometimes us economic developers, we get accused of putting out real flashy, projections about what's going to happen. I want to be clear here. If you want to see the impact of investing in the port, just look at our neighbors over in Alabama. And look at the Walmart Center there and the Amazon Center there that are there because of the investment that's been made by the state in the port. And it's been over 1,000 jobs for Alabama. No offense to our friends with the Crimson Tide, but we want those jobs here. And I'm not a negative person by nature, but I do want to talk about the downside before I close. Mobile, shockingly, has already passed us in container traffic. If we don't respond quickly, the results to our state could be devastating. We could lose close to 10,000 jobs, $200 million in taxes, and $10 billion in industry sales. As the Secretary said, we're trying to change the narrative. This is unacceptable. In closing, the port's our heritage. We were founded over 300 years ago because of our location at the mouth of the mighty Mississippi. Since that time, the port's been an essential part of our economic and cultural identity. And so now is the time for us to build on that legacy and build the road to the future. Mr. Chairman, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and thank you for the good pronunciation of the name. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. So I'm Greg Rusevich, and I serve as chairman of the Louisiana Board of International Commerce, appointed by the governor. And I also have been in the shipping business for 40 years, serving as CEO of Transoceanic Development. Legacy company was Transoceanic Shipping Company. So I've been in maritime business and global trade for my whole life, from a family-owned company. And I want to say that what has been particularly interesting, I think, for this project is the opportunity that presents. You know, I was in the business, came in the 80s, and I watched New Orleans and I watched Louisiana lose at first to Houston. Oil and gas companies went, oil and gas suppliers followed them, therefore the ports. We didn't have the shipping capabilities. Then I watched over the 90s and 2000s, all of a sudden we started losing to Savannah. I said, Savannah. Then we started losing to Charleston, and now we're losing to Mobile. And as my good friend Michael Hecht said, Mobile, frankly, losing to Mobile is unacceptable to us as we travel around the world. It's frankly embarrassing. We have an opportunity now. We have two partners, two private partners. The largest container operator in the world has offered to put funding into this new port. The largest terminal operator in North America has offered to put money in the port, almost $1 billion in private investment. We have about $400 or $500 million that's additionally been raised from the public sector, from the federal government who has believed in it. We've received money from the state government that believes in it. So we have the depth and the impetus and the financial support and wherewithal. And I want to add this, that don't just think in terms of a port. When you think of a new port in St. Bernard, think in terms of warehousing and distribution. Land is already being bought up in Tangipahoa, in St. Tammany, in St. Bernard, in New Orleans East. This is going to lift the entire region and, more importantly, lift the entire state. This is what we saw in Alabama. When Alabama surged resources into the Port of Mobile, we saw Tuscaloosa and Montgomery get auto manufacturing plants. We saw Mobile get a $2.5 million Walmart distribution center. So it's not just about the jobs in the port, and certainly it will help lift St. Bernard. We want to be fully cooperative with St. Bernard. I mean, we cannot make this work without St. Bernard. They're our friends. We need them. We all need to be in this together. Louisiana has spent too much time bickering and dithering, and this is our opportunity to bring in St. Bernard, bring in the entire state, send a message to the world that we are ready for business. We want to bring the business here. We have all the infrastructure capability. We've got the beautiful, mighty Mississippi. We have the state of Louisiana. Let's take pride. Bring that here. I just want to close with one quote from the governor. Now I'm finished. One quote from the governor in his letter to Mr. Hecht, or to the board of GNO Inc., from which I sit as a past chair. The governor said, quote, "Successful execution of LIT is essential to the future of trade in Louisiana, the very reason we're founded." Thank you all very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your time and interest in listening to me. Thank you.
Sir, please introduce yourself for the record.
Chairman, members of the committee, thank you. Good morning. My name is Jack Jensen. I'm owner and founder of Jensen Companies. We've been in business in New Orleans 43 years. Our businesses, all of our businesses are focused exclusively on international cargo, 100% import-export logistics. Enough said about LIT. I'm a trucker. I want to be clear about something very critical. LIT is only part of the solution. The Regional Planning Commission is moving forward, as we know, with a proposed new road that will connect the terminal directly to the interstate system. This road will alleviate the traffic congestion currently choking the uptown terminals, and it will protect the infrastructure of St. Bernard Parish by keeping the heavy trucks off of their roads. Quite frankly, we don't want to be with the locals. We don't want to be with the public. We need our own truckway. This isn't just a matter of what it will cost to build a road. The real question is what it will cost the state and entire region if we don't build it. Because here's the truth. Without the road, there's no LIT. Without LIT, there's no road. This is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's about protecting thousands of current jobs, creating thousands more, and keeping Louisiana a competitive force for international trade. We either move forward or we fall behind. And I can tell you from the front lines of international cargo, my entire adult life, standing still is not an option. You're either growing or you're dying. This is not just a business decision. This is about jobs. It's about economic health of the region. It's the river parishes, New Orleans and Louisiana. We will be the gateway to the Gulf of America, and my 700 employees and thousands more across our region are counting on us to get this right. Thank you for your time and your service and for understanding what's at stake here. I also would like to mention real quickly, have a minute left, the infighting between us, between Port of New Orleans, St. Bernard, and Plaquemines, is not about us fighting together. It's all about Mobile, APM Terminals, Maersk Line, putting this false narrative out there that they're going to open another container terminal 150 miles away from Mobile. Maersk is getting ready to put $100 million into Mobile as we speak for growth. We have to beat them to it before we get it, and they're saying they're going to build another container terminal in Plaquemines. It's not going to happen. Global trade, global markets do not move that way. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, gentlemen. The board is clear. The next three cards, present, wishing to speak, Christy App, Jennifer Marusak, Mike Fernandez.
I feel like I'm in the principal's office.
I can say on the record I didn't spend much time in the principal's office, but this has to be a little more uncomfortable.
It was definitely more comfortable, for sure.
I was more of a brown noser in school. I know y'all probably don't believe that, but it's true. Whoever would like to go first, please introduce yourself for the record.
Okay, I'll start. Thank you. My name is Christy App, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer of J.W. Allen & Company, based in St. Rose, Louisiana. We are global logistics providers specializing in freight forwarding and customs brokerage, and have been based in Louisiana since 1932. Today, J.W. Allen operates in every port in the country, clearing goods for import and export, but we are proudly a Louisiana-based company. As a native Louisianian, it is incredibly frustrating and disheartening that studies begun in the late 90s for a container terminal either in St. Bernard Parish or in Plaquemines Parish are still being debated. Other states, such as Alabama, Texas, Georgia, and South Carolina, managed to coalesce behind a single container port for the betterment of their entire state, and they did so decades ago. My lifelong experience in this industry has allowed me to see firsthand those factors which constitute a successful port, and more importantly, which allow those ports to in turn attract more industry to their state. It's a very simple formula. You provide those in the international shipping business with an efficiently operated terminal, and the strongest combination of inland transportation options, such as highway, railway, and waterway. Anything less is a recipe for failure. The Port of New Orleans critically evaluated several site options and chose Violet because it is within the federal flood protection system, has access to existing rail and road connectivity, and the terminal site has adjacent land available for value-added real estate development, which will further add to the job creation of the terminal. Louisiana National Terminal is our state's only hope of delivering a state-of-the-art, well-connected container terminal, which can successfully compete with ports like Houston, Mobile. The Port of Plaquemines project falls short for far too many reasons. For starters, the Category 4 Hurricane Ida in 2021 simultaneously showed the benefits and downside of being located outside the federal risk, the Hurricane Storm Damage Risk Reduction System. The site to Plaquemines was closed for 30 days following Ida. Then there are the logistical challenges. Louisiana is a net exporting state, and trucking will always be a dominant mode of transportation to and from the terminal. While the Plaquemines site reduces 30 miles for vessels coming upriver, compared to the Violet site, it merely shifts cargo to the road because of the distance the Plaquemines site adds to and from import and export hubs throughout the state. For example, using Baton Rouge, the Port of Plaquemines site adds 35 road miles in each direction to and from Baton Rouge export facilities. No matter where the container terminal is located on the river, there would be increased truck traffic. However, the transportation infrastructure in Violet is far superior with its proximity to the highway system and available for land upgrades, including the St. Bernard Transportation Corridor. Conversely, truck traffic from the West Bank Port of Plaquemines site would be routed directly into downtown New Orleans over the Crescent City Connection and over the Huey Long Bridge into Harahan. And just to close the loop on my comments, as a member of the industry in the state for many years, I just want to quiet down the white noise and what feels like competing interests from outside the state to try to derail or delay a program that's not only going to benefit St. Bernard, the Orleans Parish region, but the entire state. It's critical.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Fernandez.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairperson and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. My name is Mike Fernandez. I'm not an elected official or here in any official capacity. I'm simply a lifelong resident of St. Bernard Parish. I'm a small business owner, and I run a local residential real estate brokerage. We operate primarily in St. Bernard Parish, and I'd like to share my perspective in support of House Bill 616. As a real estate professional, I get the opportunity to see firsthand the struggles that homeowners are facing in our parish. Many neighborhoods are still recovering from Hurricane Katrina, only to be hit again by recent storms, tornadoes, and now the rising tide of rising insurance premiums. I support House Bill 616 because the expressway it proposes is absolutely essential. It's a lifeline for our community, and without it, the traffic and infrastructure strain from the LIT terminal could be devastating, not just to real estate values, but to the day-to-day quality of life of all of our residents. The expressway would help remove heavy port traffic from our local roads. It would provide a vital hurricane evacuation route and possibly even connect the eastern portion of St. Bernard Parish to broader economic opportunities. Many residents are understandably concerned about the proposed port, but in my view, the worst case scenario isn't that the port is built. It's that it's built without the appropriate plans to protect and uplift our community. If we're not connected by adequate infrastructure, we risk becoming a pass-through, not a participant in the regional progress. Again, worst case scenario isn't that the port comes, it's that we're not prepared to have the adequate infrastructure and to succeed as a result of the port. I know this bill will continue to evolve, and my request is simple, that accountability, transparency, and local input remain at the heart of the final version. And finally, I'd be remiss to thank our local leaders for making sure St. Bernard Parish has a voice. I'm very excited with everyone from Representative Bayham to our parish president and our parish council for doing a great job representing us and making sure that we have a voice in this process. So, thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Ms. Marusak.
Yes, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the committee, Jennifer Marusak. I'm Executive Director of the Ports Association of Louisiana. And I want to be very clear. When it comes to site selection for a project, PAL is Switzerland. But the site has already been chosen for this project. But this bill that we are supporting is about the process. And as Chairman Wright said during his introduction 2 weeks ago, he almost brought a bill where all ports would have this authority when needed, with, understanding the approval processes. But this is definitely a process that all of our ports would love to emulate. And that's all I have, except to say, Representative Spell, I just saw your email from yesterday while I was sitting in committee, so I replied to you, but sorry.
We're going to try to keep our comments on the four corners of this bill. Thank you. The board's clear. Rep. Spell, for your sake, I hope her response wasn't dealing with a bill that we've already passed over. We're going to move on to cards. These are folks present will provide information if requested in support. These are all in support. Walter Leger Jr., John Paul Escudier, probably butchered that, Matt Gresham, Patrice Cusimano, John Farrer, Beth Branch, Todd Murray, Jennifer Ansardi, Mandy Mitchell. These are present in support, not wishing to speak. Keely McGibney, Nick Waltz, Lenny Kapowski, James Carter, Chet Chesson, Reverend Kevin Gabriel, Sharonda Williams. Sharonda's here? You got to watch them South Cameron Tarpons. They surprise you every now and then. Lauren Marino. Don't tell Trista I embarrassed myself today. Michael Bopp, Christian Rhodes, Justin Stevens, and Logan Anderson. Okay. We also have a blue card from Governor Jeff Landry, present, not wishing to speak, in support. And we have white cards present, will provide information if requested, from Julia Fisher Cormier, Henry Kinney, and Secretary Donahue. Okay, now we're going to move into the opposition. Representative Bayham and Superintendent Voce. Did I get that right? please introduce yourselves for the record. I'll bat lead off, Mr. Chairman. State Representative Mike Bayham, District 103, which comprises of all of St. Bernard Parish. I would like to enter for the record 39 emails I've received from St. Bernard residents, all against this. These emails were sent after the previous meeting that this committee had. These are all new emails from residents. I'd like to have these entered in the record, if I may. All in opposition to House Bill 616. Thank you. I'm not going to rehash all of the things I said at the last meeting. Obviously, this is an important bill and a consequential bill for my community. I'm not the sponsor of this bill. I'm not the author of it. According to the legislative website, this bill was pre-filed April 5th. I didn't even know it existed till April 16th. At no point did anyone, not from the port, not the sponsor of the bill, have a single conversation with me. In fact, the only person I've had a conversation with about this bill that supports it was Chairman Michael Thomas of the Port when we met on Thursday morning. And I appreciate him visiting with me before a very busy committee day, making a special trip up here. St. Bernard Parish has every right to be concerned about our future. And when there's a lack of transparency on something that will significantly affect our community, it's only reasonable for us to have suspicions. We've not had the best relationship historically with the Port of New Orleans. And we see a bill that's brought up that creates all these powers for the port regarding our community. You know, we are right to be alarmed about this bill. And the people of our community are very much against the port, and they're not for this road either. I wish there would have been more conversations. I've yet to have a single conversation with Representative Wright. He represents Covington. I represent St. Bernard. Not one conversation about this bill. My question is this: if this bill is such a good thing for my community, where was the transparency in the front end? Why weren't we having these conversations in February before the bill was pre-filed? Reasonable questions. Where have the conversations been since? Only one. Colleagues, this bill has been significantly remade. I didn't get a copy of the substitute bill till Friday at 2:30. Here we are Monday morning talking about this bill. Is this how we put together bills that are going to have such a major impact on our state economy and my community of St. Bernard? No, that's not the right way to do things. Representative Breaux talks about the experience they're having in Plaquemines Parish regarding their bridge issue. It's a nightmare. I don't want that nightmare hitting my community. This legislation, page 4 on the substitute bill, line 24, 25. Additionally, the board shall consult with St. Bernard Parish about any impacts the St. Bernard Transportation Corridor roadway project may have on existing and planned local roadways, drainage, flood protection, and other infrastructure. What does that even mean, consult? Just going to let us know, hey, we're going to do this, whether you like it or not. This, once again, and I will close with a line I said the last time I was before you. St. Bernard's name is on this bill. Its legislator's name is not on this bill, and St. Bernard is practically not existent in this bill except from just putting it as a name on a corridor. My community deserves better than this. We're supposed to be the House of Representatives, the House of the people. I am here fighting for my community. If this was such a good idea, why would I not have 39 emails for this?
Instead, 39 emails against it. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Doris Foche, Superintendent of St. Bernard Parish Public School System. I've been superintendent for the last 20 years. As many of you know, Hurricane Katrina completely wiped out our community, and we had to build it from the ground up, and that was the entire school system from my point of view. My school, and I realize you're talking about trying to separate this bill from the lit, which is really impossible to do, as many of the prior commentators have said. I have a school right in the middle of where this lit is being built. So I would assume it's going to be right at the beginning somewhere of this transportation corridor. In this school, we have over 350 children, preschool through 5th grade. I've got 2 4-year-old classes in there, and I have over 50 3-year-olds with disabilities who receive services at this particular site. There was no communication with the school system prior to any of this happening. The port came in and bought all the surrounding area around the school before we even knew what was happening. No one contacted us. No one had any communication with us prior to that purchase of the property surrounding our school. So we are right in the middle of this entire controversy. We will be the people impacted significantly in the short term and as well as the long term. Where am I going to put these kids? There's a state law that says I can't sell a school unless it is surplus property. This is not surplus property. I have a functioning school here with children there every day as we speak this morning. Originally, House Bill 616, which we didn't even know was going to be heard 2 weeks ago until I think was heard on a Monday or Tuesday. We found out it was over the Easter holidays, that Thursday or Friday before it was being heard. It had extensive rights of expropriation, which really is a scary concept to me. I rebuilt this entire school system after Hurricane Katrina. Who's to say that someone can come in and expropriate my school without our consent? Now, it may not be in this bill that you've done now as a substitute bill, even though it does reference expropriation laws as they currently exist. But how do we know that this bill is not going to get out on the House floor or over the Senate and some of those rights being put back in?
Yep.
This is a scary concept for us. I have no place to put these children. We do not intend to sell the school at this point. Actually, we have a lawsuit. The St. Bernard Parish School System has a lawsuit against the Port of New Orleans that will be heard beginning next month. And this potentially could be a long process that we need to go through. So as far as the roadway is concerned, I would think the roadway would originate right in the middle maybe of where my school exists. So how do I know at this point there are no plans to take it on that basis? Thank you very much for hearing what we have to say. And you know, there's a lot of talk this morning about all the money that's going to be coming in and who's going to share in it and what happens if the state gets the road back and such. But there's been no talk about how it affects the kids and what benefit will our school children derive from this particular bill. Thank you very much for hearing me this morning.
We have a few questions. Representative Phelps.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Bayham, there was conversation earlier mentioned that the other stakeholders have been contacted and there has been conversation since the last meeting. I heard you say you've only spoken with Representative Wright. You have not spoken with him, but who have you spoken with since?
Chairman of the Port of New Orleans, Michael Thomas, who's here today.
Okay. And was there any resolve or change of
I was made
position?
aware that there would be a substitute bill brought up, but I didn't have the bill. I didn't receive the bill until the next day in the afternoon, Friday afternoon.
Would that mean your position is still the same as the first hearing.
Yes, Representative. For what I stated, my reasons at the front end, and to share what Ms. Vaucher has just said. This bill has assumed many different forms, and you and I both know, being in the Capitol, something can start off one way and change several times before it finally gets adopted. And based upon the secrecy on this matter, we're all very concerned.
And I think that's my main question too. And if Mr. Chairman allows me, when there was so much conversation about we all have had conversation, it seems that there was some transparency left out at the very beginning, if I heard both of you speak, and that's what I heard at the last meeting. Madam Superintendent, I know you can't talk on the suit, but I do think I understand when you state that the properties were brought all around the school.
Completely surrounding, 1,000 acres surrounding our school, which is right in the middle.
And the process, as you stated, you're not able to sell the school. That would take what process, if you
The
could share
district
briefly?
attorney is our legal representative in St. Bernard Parish. He has said that we're not allowed to sell it unless it is surplus property. It is not surplus property. It is an operating school there, and there is no place else to put these children.
And what is your appreciation with the property around your school? How do you see that happening, even with this road being built? If the road is built today, what do you see as how would it affect your school at this time before the project continues to move on? As you stated, I think I'm there with you, which I alluded to this morning. This bill is about a road, but it will lead somewhere. It leads to the entire project. Is that where you were?
Yes, it does.
Okay, I think I was understanding that too, and that's what I was referencing this morning. So what is your appreciation if the road is built and the project continues?
Well,
with the
that
school?
may be out of my league, but I can see.
It would just be around your school.
The road will not be built unless this project continues. I think everybody knows that.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
All right.
Thank you, Representative Phelps. Representative Walters.
Thank you, Chair. Superintendent, how are you?
Ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Quick question, because I was online just researching more about the project, trying to gain more information, and I read that LIT is proposing that the school, it will be relocated in Violet, and it will be rebuilt. Were you aware of this? It's online on the site.
There are proposals that it could be rebuilt in that Violet area with other property that the port owns, but the school system has not agreed to any of this at all.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Walters. Representative Chesson.
That's the same question I had. That's the same question I had.
Okay, thank you.
So no discussion of any plans as far as what's to happen with the school if the project goes through? Either one of you can answer.
We are, if
The
the
district
DA
attorney,
wants to answer,
he'll be speaking in a moment. You may want to ask him.
Okay.
since we're in litigation right now,
I got you.
I'm not sure how much I can actually.
So is it your understanding that the school system has to agree to this, or can that land be expropriated, or is it Section 16 land?
We don't, we think in current law, we are a political subdivision of the state of Louisiana. And it's my understanding in current law, it cannot be expropriated away from us.
Okay. What grades does it service? Does the school service?
What race does?
What grades?
Grades?
Oh, no, not what race.
Oh, no. I'm sorry.
Not that question. If I
You know, when you
misspoke,
get a
please,
little bit older,
no,
sometimes
no.
the hearing is not quite as good. Pre-K through the fifth grade.
Pre-K through the fifth grade.
3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, and kindergarten through fifth.
Okay, I got you. Okay. Yeah, that's it. Superintendent, listen, on a side note, you mentioned 20 years.
Yes, sir.
That is amazing. Like, I want you to know, I was a school board member for 13 years. And I don't know if that makes me a good board member or not, but I was 13 years and we went through 6 superintendents. And they were all great people. They were all great people. They all brought something to the table. So to be there for 20 years is amazing. You must be doing an amazing
Well,
job.
actually, I started teaching there over 50 years ago. So my heart and soul is in the St. Bernard Parish school system.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
But
ma'am.
I became superintendent the year before Katrina hit.
That's amazing. Thank you for what you do.
All right.
Thank you, Representative Chasson. Representative Wiley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Madam Superintendent. I can only imagine, I did have some experience in response during Katrina in my other life and spent quite a great deal of time in St. Bernard working with your sheriff at the time there and others, and saw firsthand the devastation and worked there for quite some time. But I didn't do, and matter of fact, nobody did what you did, which is wake up one morning and realize your entire system is devastated and basically doesn't exist anymore. I honor that. I have to ask, though, or clarify, so LIT is saying, and they're asserting it in this document, that is currently located within the proposed footprint of the future terminal. We all agree on that. Since the start, Port Nola has been ready to support the construction of a new modern school in Violet that would be arguably in proximity to where the school is now. Am I correct?
That's what they're saying, yes.
2 potential new school sites have been identified and shared with the school board, elected officials, and community since 2021. So I'm reading verbatim. So if a school was built on property, and obviously in concert with the school system, let there be no doubt, then the St. Bernard could get a brand new school, superintendent could get a brand new school in proximity where the old school is, and then the old school would indeed become surplus property. And you could, in theory, I'm not trying to broker a deal here, but in theory you could sell the property, the school system could, which now would have become surplus, and your kids get a new school, your staff gets a new school. I know this is oversimplification, but indeed there is a plan for the K-5 kids to have a new school.
It's not the plan of the St. Bernard Parish school system.
Agreed. Yes, ma'am.
That is not the plan of the St. Bernard Parish school system.
Amen. Thank you for your answer, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Wiley. Representative Walters.
Thank you, Chair. I have a quick question, point of order. In St. James, when a plant was planning to build around a school there, and actually did build around a school there, the plant relocated the school to another site. I think they even built a stadium for them. Do we know a little bit more on how that happened or took place?
I personally do not. I think we could probably try and find out what that process was like. I'm not sure, sometimes through the regulatory process, if there's state and or federal money involved, if there's a NEPA process or an EIS that's going on, those items are going to have to be addressed. I'm not aware of the particulars on that particular situation.
May I respond to that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When you say the plant built them a new school, I'm not completely conversant with what exactly happened in that particular situation. But the education of children in St. Bernard is entrusted to the St. Bernard Parish School Board, not to a plant, not to the port. It's entrusted to the St. Bernard Parish School Board and the citizens of St. Bernard Parish. So that would have to be done in tandem, in conjunction, and with, I would hope, approval of the board itself.
Yes, ma'am. And I was just asking to see if the chair had any insight on that, anything to make the process, easier, to make sure that the kids are well taken care of, new build, new design, and that, you're satisfied, the board is satisfied. And so I was asking for that particular reason.
Yes, ma'am. And I would like, to say that is a new school built after Katrina. And over the past 20 years, we have rebuilt an entire school system with new schools, braiding all the funding sources available. So the St. Bernard Parish School Board is really more the expert in building schools than any other entity involved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Walters. The board is clear. Thank you. We'll move on to our next round of cards. Present would like to speak in opposition. Diana Dysert. Fred Everhart, Janet Perez, please introduce yourself for the record.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Diana Dysart. I'm a former teacher and a member of the St. Bernard Parish School Board for over 42 years. I currently serve as the Vice President of the board. I respectfully come before you to voice my opposition to the proposed legislation, House Bill 616, as well as the entire LIT project of the Port of New Orleans to build the largest container facility in the world in our community. This massive plan has been forced upon us by the New Orleans port without any thought or consideration given as to how it will negatively impact our citizens, and more particular, our children. I've lived in St. Bernard Parish all my life. I've raised my children there, 4 of them. In turn, they have raised their families, 12 of them, my grandchildren, here in a community that affords a safe environment along with excellent educational opportunities that extend from pre-kindergarten through our community college that was instituted by our hardworking legislative teams at the time and our school board. 20 years ago, our community was decimated by Hurricane Katrina, 26,000 homes destroyed by massive floodwaters caused directly by saltwater intrusion from the MRGO that eradicated our wetlands, the natural barrier for the hurricane protection. This, along with the complete failure of the hurricane protection levee system along the Mississippi River Gulf outlet, left an open door for hurricane forces to overtake and destroy our entire community. Every home, every school, every church, every grocery store, every building, nothing was habitable. The MRGO was a man-made navigational channel that was the brainchild of the Port of New Orleans and the federal government. That project was disastrous failure, and now a $1 billion flood wall and locks stand at the entrance of MRGO to protect tidal surges from destroying the city of New Orleans. Now, 20 years after we rebuilt our homes, our schools, and one of the most desirable and fastest growing communities in America, with self-sacrifice, hard work, blood, sweat, and tears, the Port of New Orleans wants to destroy us again. The supersized container facility will bring thousands of container trucks through our parish on a daily basis. We have one major thoroughfare with 4 lanes that runs east-west to facilitate the traffic from the proposed lit site in Violet to Chalmette and then north to I-610. By their own estimate, over 5,000 trucks per day on the road will depend upon to transport our children. And we're talking about dropping off children in the morning, picking them up in the afternoon. These are many, many dangers for our children and for the community. And we're talking about the most precious cargo, ladies and gentlemen, our children. And I know that my time went off, and I want to be respectful. Can I have just one more minute? Thank you. There are no tax benefits to the parish government or to the school system from this facility. Only the Port of New Orleans with tax-exempt status will benefit from this catastrophic burden placed on the people of St. Bernard Parish. Finally, contained within the footprint of the LIT facility in Violet is one of our most beloved schools, Willie Smith Elementary School. This school is situated in a historically black community and is our only school that is a majority of students are African American. Again, in this grand plan to operate the world's largest container facility, no thought or concern was made by the Port of New Orleans for our most precious commodity, the safety of our children and the best welfare of our children. What are their considerations or priorities for life in St. Bernard Parish and in Louisiana itself? Please stand by our parish leaders and State Representative Mike Baham and vote no to this legislation. I thank you very sincerely for your time and for listening. Thank you very much.
Whoever's next, please introduce yourself for the record. Go ahead, Jen.
My name is Janet Perez. I'm a resident of Violet, Louisiana. To borrow a phrase that many Port of New Orleans officials have referred to us, the people in my neighborhood are considered one of their closest stakeholders. I'm 1 yard and 1 cemetery away from where the terminal will be seated. So I have grave concerns, and I'm here today to ask you to please stop this House bill from progressing beyond this committee, keep it from going to the floor, and keep it from being approved. Because make no mistake, it's been portrayed today as being for the road itself. It is not. It is in conjunction with the terminal. And the residents of our parish do not want the terminal. We do not want to have to worry about what our children will be exposed to, what's going to happen to our environment, what's going to happen to our parish itself. And now with the permissions that are being asked for in House Bill 616, will we have to worry about our homes being taken away from us? We lost our homes once to Katrina. We don't want to lose them again to the Port of New Orleans. So I'm asking you, please do not give them permission to do this. Prior to signing an injunction to stop the LIT, I was a member of the Port of New Orleans Community Advisory Council. When I went on a tour as part of that position of the port, it was shortly after a radio talk show where one of their commissioners mentioned what I call the mythical road, because at that point there was very little talk about it. People were complaining, but it wasn't truly addressed. And I asked the representative then, who was guiding our tour, who was their public relations officer at the time, about that. And she emphatically said, the Port of New Orleans is not in the business of building bridges and roads. They may maintain them, they may operate them, but they do not build them. They're asking now for you to give them permission to build a road. They're asking for you to give them permission to possibly take land from homeowners and from entities like our school system and use that land to enter into private partnerships. It's our private property. If a state entity is doing it for the good of the community, that's one thing. But and I understand that the port is a quasi-state state entity, but they're going to be taking it and using it with private businesses to get this road done. We're asking you to protect our rights, to be a voice for the residents of St. Bernard who do not want this project. As of today, there are no permits that have been granted for either the LIT. There are even no specific plans for their roadway. The Regional Planning Commission, I understand, is supposed to announce some of their final, decisions as to the studies they've been conducting. Right now, we don't know where those roads are going to go. Until such time, please do not give them any permission that can harm the citizens of our parish. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate you letting us come and speak. And I listened to the recording from the previous one in its entirety, and I thank all of you for your thoughtful comments and questions.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank y'all, the board, for allowing us to come and give our opinion and opposition on this very crucial project. Let me state this for the record. I did not know that the
Your name,
Port of New
please.
Orleans, I'm sorry. Councilman at Large Fred Everhart, St. Bernard Parish. I'm at parish-wide elected official. I did not know, today was the first day that I knew that I heard that the parish president and administration was talking with the Port of New Orleans. So much sneakiness been going on through this entire project. It's from start to finish, from day one till now. We had to find out that our state representative at that time and our parish president and one of our elected officials was talking with the port even way before it even came out. And when it did, that's when everything went upside down. I'm trying to keep my words not the way I usually talk, and it's very hard because if everybody knows me, I talk straight from the heart. But when it did come out, we created a group called the SOS. We got 10,000 people strong, and could have grew more and more. But we let it go at that. We had enough. And as it proceeded through the years, we got even stronger. the port got even stronger and more persistent, trying to push this thing down our throat. People, our land and our infrastructure, even if this road is built, this high-rise road is built, cannot support this port. We have a school. We have subdivisions surrounding it. We have a river. We got a deep draft. A river has to be, it's all in the studies. The river has to be drafted at a 60-foot draft. That is going to, over the years, our river and the Gulf has not been getting along, and saltwater intrusions have been incurring further and further upriver. We dig that river 60 feet from the mouth of the Mississippi River all the way to the Violet. We are now putting the city of New Orleans and Jefferson and further upriver in jeopardy because of the saltwater wedge that comes up the river in certain times of year. People don't think about that, but that all plays to this road and to this bill. If the bill's passed and this goes to committee to the House, it's Ms. Vaucher said it best. We just can't trust the port on if it's going to stay in this state or it's going to be amended. So many things could happen. And then I got off track a little bit, and then at what point do we, our citizens of St. Bernard Parish, have a say-so in this? I hear that the governors are supporting it now today. What about our sovereignty? What about our right to support to support what's right and what's wrong in our own parish? I know each and every one of you, if this was coming in y'all parish and y'all representatives was against it, I know y'all would probably sitting right here and talking the same way I am against the port. Everything about House Bill 616 is like an onion. The more you peel it, the more it stinks. You, sir, Representative Fontenot, you had a bunch of questions. They can't answer. It's pushing this thing down our throats. Please kill this bill. Give us our God-given right to represent our people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Millie Harris, Perry Nikosha, Marion McCloskey. Whoever would like to go first, please introduce yourself.
I'd like to start by saying good morning to every soul in this room. My name is Marion McCloskey. I'm not for the port. This is my notes, so please. My background, I'm a resident lifelong of St. Bernard Parish and moved back after Katrina to rebuild my life in a shop. Started a business there, Marion's Automotive. I call my shop my church because every day I start with faith. Anybody who's willing to talk to me has an open conversation with me, and I'll set my tools down, put it aside. I've started having these conversations with people in my community. The general consensus is that they do not want the port as well, and that goes from Araby to Delacroix, from the start to the finish, white, black, and Spanish. That's the majority of what I've heard. A lot of people are scared to speak out about this. That's a sign of tyranny when they're scared to speak against their governing bodies. The timing of this bill comes out right before Easter. I find that an odd coincidence, being that I'm a man of faith. Jesus was a king and a servant. You are also leaders and servants of the state. It is your duty to protect what's right. It's easy to stand with power and money. It's hard to stand for the silent voices. I asked the residents of St. Bernard how they feel about it. There's a reason why I'm here, and that's one of the verses I hold dear to my heart, which is Isaiah chapter 6, verse 8. Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? And I said, send me. I will go, Lord. I find it ironic that in front of this building there is a giant statue, a beautiful statue of a knight holding a sword. At the knight's feet, I do not see stock portfolios, money, gold. What I see is a scared group of people, a community. And what you're looking at right here is a scared group of people. Please consider that when you're making your decision. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Millie Harris, School Board Representative, District 8, serving Miro and Violet, Louisiana. In 1950, St. Bernard offered a piece of parcel of land to provide a consolidated school to serve our Black families of St. Bernard Parish. On that land, Violet Consolidated School was built. And on that land now stands Willie Smith Elementary. That parcel of property has served our community for 75 years as an educational vessel for our students. Our beautiful superintendent did not share with you just how hard it was to rebuild St. Bernard. But as you all know, if you build it, they will come. If you build schools, communities coalesce. And when you destroy them, communities leave. Representative Phelps, you ask, what does this road really mean? Where does it start and where does it go? It can only start on the property that belongs to Willie Smith Jr. Elementary, a majority economically disadvantaged school. I've been approached by folks of the port, convinced the school board to sell your land. When you ask the port how much are they willing to give, what are the dollar figures they have to invest, their answer is within reason. Who gets to determine what is reasonable? Who gets to determine where the school should be built? Revised Statute 17:81, which enumerates the responsibility and the authority of school boards, says that it is up to the school board to determine where schools are built. We want our schools to serve the families of our parish. We do not want a political subdivision housed in another district to come in and tell us where we should educate kids. It is not up to them. It is up to us. We are responsible for supporting our families and our students. And as a resident who is going to be sandwiched in by this port, I can tell you, we don't want it. I know that Louisiana needs a deep water terminal. We all know that. We have needed it since the 1990s. It belongs in Plaquemines Parish. They want it. The port doesn't want to be in Plaquemines Parish because they would have to profit share with Plaquemines. But they have found a way not to profit share with St. Bernard. Our residents will have to give up the community that we love. And you're taking our voice when you approve this legislation, because if it hits the floor, it will be amended. We will lose our authority to determine where to educate our students. Please do not vote in favor of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Please introduce yourself for the record.
Yes. Hi. Again, my name is Perry Nicosia. I was here a couple of weeks ago. I'm the District Attorney of St. Bernard Parish. And I represent the school board, and I'm here in that capacity. And I'm a resident of St. Bernard, lifelong resident. I'm here in that capacity as well. And when we were here last time, you recall me, if you were here, talking about the school, and that there's a school right in the middle. And I'm so glad today to be joined by Ms. Voce, Millie, Ms. Dysart, and we've yet to hear from another school board member, Carly. She will be up here speaking as well, because there's a school there. And I appreciate the fact that they did an amended bill, and at least for the moment, the bill focuses on the road and does not allow them anymore to expropriate a school. But I've been coming to the Capitol for 10 years on criminal justice legislation, and we all know when this committee passes it, if it does, out of this committee, and it gets to the floor, and it gets to the Senate, I'm scared y'all going to take this school. I'm scared not particularly this committee is going to take the school, the state may take this school. And that's not right. Our schools should be up to local school boards. They should dictate where the schools are, where they have been, and what's the appropriate thing to do. So I don't think, like in St. James, when it was worked out ahead of time, and there was transparency about moving that school, and they worked in partnership moving that school. As I sat here and listened to all the members speak in support of this bill, and I was here last time, 2 weeks ago, nobody mentioned the school. Nobody wants to talk about it. You know, the port has ignored that school since day one. They don't want to talk about the bill. Sure, they could put it on the internet that they're going to relocate it, but that's not talking to Ms. Voce. That's not coming to a school board meeting. Anybody could put it on the internet. So I'm just asking that we consider the school and what's going on. And just so you know, now, to get down to House Bill 616, and 3 minutes is really short for me, as y'all know, I like to talk. But 616 basically takes the authority of the Louisiana Transportation Authority. The state can build that road, but you're going to give it to the port. You're going to give the authority to build a road connected to an interstate that the state can now do, and you're going to give it to the port. Why? The state can build this road if it needs it, and I don't think it's going to need it because we've got a school right there, and we don't want the port. So if you talk about building it in Shreveport or Slidell, and if the Port of New Orleans wants to build it there, make sure you get some money in Shreveport, Rep. Walters, because we're not getting any money in St. Bernard. We get nothing. So in Slidell, can you imagine if the port was in St. Tammany, building a big old port right there on the lake in Slidell, and St. Tammany gets none of the revenue share from that port? You'd have a room full of St. Tammany residents, like you have people in St. Bernard that are outraged because we don't have a seat at the table and we don't get no revenue at all. We're promised future maybe tax benefits from selling pool boys. That's not enough and it's not fair. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have a couple of questions. Representative Phelps.
Yes, sir, to the attorney. There was mention again about conversations since the last meeting. Were you a part of any of these conversations?
Like Representative Baham, I received a communication from Mike Thomas, and we talked about the substitute bill, and he wanted to know my opinion on it. That was it. So I was made aware of the substitute bill, and I was unfortunately concerned that some of my parish government, I say my because I live there, but some of our parish government officials are being misled, I think, and they came in support today, not understanding the ramifications of what this means if this bill is successful, because it's going to be put on the internet, right? It's all about messaging and media. If we keep ignoring the school and the messaging is we come in, it scares everybody. Because we're not involved.
Right.
They're just telling us they're coming. And when this bill passes, trust me, it's going to be on a committee tomorrow. I mean, on the internet and social media tomorrow, that the port's building a road and they're coming. And we're worried about a school. We need to do something to address that situation.
And I do understand that's part of it. And again, that's where my was alluding to, that this road is just the beginning of the entire project. But when it was stated that the properties were brought around the school, and the conversation that you all had about the substitute bill, so would it still be accurate in saying there was no community meeting? All of the governmental bodies, everyone has not been at the table even since the last?
The communication between St. Bernard Parish government officials is not, we're not working together very well. We put it like that. You have some councilmen and councilmen that are in favor and working, and that's who the port wants to talk to, only the people that don't have a problem, that they can get on their side. And then the people that are not on their side, they don't want to talk to. Okay. Or it's limited, it's not, we don't feel like it's fully transparent as much.
It's sort of like we had another bill when the body has a vote here, and there's been no meeting agenda item on this for any of the bodies?
There has been nothing in St. Bernard where everybody got together to discuss pros and cons as a
In an open
government, as
meeting.
an entire government. Right. It's been very fractured, and our residents feel that. That's unfortunate. The residents feel like we're not working together. And now you see, but the consensus among the general public is clearly outraged at this because we get no money. We don't see no benefit whatsoever financially, but for maybe tax. And they put that out. They project those tax benefits. You know, by the year 2030 or 2040, you're going to have hundreds of millions of dollars, right? But they know the port. They're not guaranteeing that. I say make them put it in writing. Put what you're going to make in writing. You know, tell us for sure. Don't project it. Like, share the revenue. Plaquemines is going to give them 50% of the revenue. And you know, the other thing it brings it to me is that, because what they put a lot on the internet, and the Port of New Orleans, this is off their website, they tend to brag that the government and the taxpayers are going to pay for the Port of New Orleans. I mean, we're going to spend $500 million of our own tax money to build a port. At least that. And then they're not being transparent about the total cost of that port. They keep saying $1.8 billion. Well, I got a copy of Lieutenant Governor Nunges's letter, and it's $3.6, $3.9 billion now. That 1.8 estimate is old. So why are we bragging that the government and the taxpayers are going to pay for a port on the backs of government and on the back of us taxpayers? You know what? If it goes to Plaquemines, no taxpayer money. So I would urge, and I'd like to sit down with some of the people and make a smart decision for the state of Louisiana. And I know Governor Landry is serious about cutting waste, saving money, and spending it appropriately. I think we need to have that conversation, what's best for Louisiana, because us taxpayers, whether it's federal or state money, you know, spending $500 million of our money, our hard-earned money, to build a port in St. Bernard, just because the Port of New Orleans wants it there, maybe we should take a look at the Plaquemine site. Maybe we should take a look at a place where the terminal operators and the port companies are going to pay 100%, right? That seems to make a little bit of sense. I'm not a shipping guy, so I don't understand I'm just throwing out big numbers, right? But clearly, they're advertising the taxpayers are going to spend money. So to address your question, that's kind of a lot of my concerns.
And lastly, just because you're the attorney in the room, I heard someone say that there was no communication from the very beginning. I don't know if anyone's asked that in locals, but have y'all been given a reason why it appears that there was no transparency from the very beginning of this bill? Maybe I should just start.
You talking about the 616 bill?
Yes, I guess that's where it started. I'm not really sure.
Yeah,
but I think that's the elephant in the room. Why was there not conversation beforehand? And I don't know what before is, if it's before the bill or years ago.
The frustration with this bill, right, of not knowing it was coming until the Thursday, the day before Good Friday, that Thursday, that is the way we feel in St. Bernard all the time since 2020, 2021. It's always been like that. It's always been, this is just how it's going to be. And then they'll go have a meeting at a community center in a little bitty area and get a few people to show up and pretend like now we're communicating with the public, right? But it was nothing. There's never been much. And I think they have acknowledged that. And to Mike Thomas's credit, you know, he's acknowledged some things were not properly discussed back then. And he's just getting involved now. So, you know, I want to put that out there. He really has been making much more of an effort than what they have in the past. But again, with this bill, the same way. I had no word it was coming. So that's just the way it's always been. We're kind of used to it and why we're so worried and disgruntled about the project.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Phelps. Representative Spell.
Thank
Thank you, Chairman. I know you mentioned the concern over possible amendments or changing of the legislation as it's sitting before this committee today, and the fear of that is enough for you to ask for us to not fairly pass this bill. My question is, though, as the substitute piece of legislation is sitting in front of this committee, does that meet or address the concerns that you came to us last committee meeting regarding the scope of power of the port?
It changed it. I am less concerned now about the expropriation of a school, yes. But I am still concerned that the state of Louisiana, that has oversight and the powers to expropriate property to build a road, why would the state of Louisiana relinquish that power to a port? The state of Louisiana can engage with private entities to build a road. So you're granting your own power to the Port of New Orleans, to me, worries me. I don't like taking state power, state oversight. And y'all going to have none of that if you pass this bill. If the governor signs it, the port's going to go do what they want. They might work with the department, right? But if you read the words of what the bill actually says, it really does relinquish all the authority to the Port of New Orleans to build a road, which right now exists with the state. So it's an unnecessary bill. I think the true intent was to take the school. And thank God we're not there now. Thank God that's for another day, that it's been substituted. But my concern is still that it's an overreach of government to give all that power and control to just one little port entity to do it all to build a road.
Okay.
So it's kind of a different concern of mine.
Okay, thank you for that. Sure. And then speaking to the school, and not to be too repetitive to my colleague right here that mentioned, according to information that we have, or that I have, let me say that, there's been 2 potential sites offered in conversation. Is that, I guess my question, is that a falsehood? Is that something that has not been well communicated on whose part? It's very confusing to me, and I just want to see if I can get some feedback on that.
Yes, I have seen drawings where the port owns land that's in the Violet area, and we have seen that, and it has been shown to us recently that here are the 2 sites. But the problem since the beginning is they pretended like the school wasn't there, and then they were talking to parish officials that had nothing to do with the school. So they weren't talking to all the stakeholders when they originally started this process. They were talking with the parish administrators, and they flashed a letter from former parish president Guy McGinnis saying he's in favor, or I never read the letter, but suggesting he's in favor. Well, that same parish president came to my office and had me file a lawsuit against the port. So that's what's confusing to me, that a parish president letter is being used in support of this. And he came in my office, we had a press conference, you can Google it, and he's standing right next to me, fighting the port because I disagree with Rep. Walters. In 1992, the Port of New Orleans became a 2-parish jurisdiction. St. Bernard, we have our own jurisdiction now. That's part of that lawsuit. We're not going to get into that. But so you see, there's just a lot, and it's confusing to all the citizens, right? We have elected officials running on a platform, we against the port, and those same elected officials come here today supporting a roadway to help them build a port. So it's really confusing, and there's a lack of trust amongst the general public in St. Bernard.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can
Thank you,
I
Representative Spell. Ma'am.
Could I add one more thing to it? Because I think that this is an important piece for me as a school board representative for a portion of the Violet community. I was taken to lunch, I was taken to coffee. I was shown that exact piece that you are referencing. And when asked, how much do you have set aside within your budget from the Port of New Orleans to rebuild a school? Not fair market value, replacement cost. How much do you have? They cannot give us a number. So yes, there are 2 pieces of property that they own, but do they have $50 million to pay for a new school? Do they have $80 million to pay for a new school? What do they have budgeted? Because for us to say, okay, we're willing to partner with you and have you build us a new school, if you're not going to build me what I have or better, How can I say yes? How can I tell my students who are in a building that was built, the first federally funded building built in Louisiana after Katrina, built in 2008, how can I say, yes, I'm going to move you, if I don't know for sure that what you're going to give me is what my students deserve? And the Port of New Orleans has given us no dollar figure, none, except to say within reason. That's not good enough for my kids. I don't think it would be good enough for anybody's children, within reason, from somebody who is outside of your district, outside of your parish, who does not have a stake in the game except for what is best for their bottom line. We cannot have this conversation unless they're going to be transparent, and they won't do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative
May I
Snell.
add one more thing?
We have more questions. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Representative Walters.
Thank you, Chair. Board member, DA, anybody at the table, do you all have how you would like the school designed, redesigned, constructed?
There's been no conversation, nothing like that. Look, it's the desire of the superintendent and the school board. We're not interested in selling the school. We can't sell a school. We haven't sat into the table. It's a great school. It's got a lot of historical significance to the community. And look, why would they buy 1,000 acres of land with a school in the middle? And we still sitting here 3 years late, or 4 years later now, going on 5. They knew there was a school there when they bought all this land. What investment advice? How did we get here? It's just puzzling that they would do that, right? And then not offer a penny of revenue to the community they want to destroy.
Well, online, I've seen where they were allocating different dollar amounts to community college and a number of other entities. Have you seen that? Is it too low? Is the amount too low? Do they need to up the amount?
To me, they're really, really good at media and marketing. They're really, really good. But as far as sitting down, I've never had any kind of discussions like that about particular, what it would look like. Because the school's not interested in selling. It's just where they are, And if you have a school board meeting and you want to bring up the idea of moving the school or not, it's going to be packed. They're not going to fit the people in a room demanding that keep that school there, don't sell. So politically, it's very, very difficult on every school board member and the superintendent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Walters. Vice Chairman Fontenot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Real quick, you keep saying that the school is in the middle of the property, but I kind of Googled it. It's actually up on the edge on the highway next to the river. But could the port, in essence, develop this 1,000 acres and not buy the school, not move the school, not appropriate the school, could leave it right where it's at? Are you refusing to sell a school just for the community's sake so they don't build a project in your community? Is that where we are?
They just have no desire to sell a school. I don't think...
I think that's fair, but they could develop the project without even going to you, correct?
I think they could try. I just don't think that it would pass permitting because you're not going to drive thousands of trucks right past elementary school kids while they're playing. You drop those big containers, it's so loud and obnoxious. If you've ever been around a port like this, the crashing sound is very loud. And if you look at the design, the ship, you can literally, where the ship's supposed to be parked, where they will be docked, I should say, you could almost throw a rock from the front of the school and hit. And the way it's designed, it's a very costly project. I mean, $3.9 billion, because of where it's located and the fact that it has to go over the rail, the equipment has to go over the rail and the road. It's really, really high and very, very costly to build this container facility. It'll be the most expensive container facility in the country, and they only have $800 million from the private shipping companies. So how are they going to afford a $4 billion project with only $800 million, but for the taxpayers put in the bill.
Do you know if the port is approved? Has their dock been approved yet?
No, it's, if I understand, and others can, I think some of the parish officials, I think there's a May 27th community open hearing. Is that right? When's
May 26th.
May 26th. We have the community is organizing right now to show up in force against granting a permit. In the school, of course, we're going to have to be there because they're going to be granting a permit to operate a port completely around the school. So, unfortunately, this conversation should have been had 3 or 4 years ago, but yet here we sit and have to show up at a permitting process on May 26th to discuss this exact issue.
Thank you.
But yeah, I guess they could build it around us.
Thank you. That's all the question I have, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Vice Chair. Okay, the board is clear.
Okay.
Thank you for
Thank y'all for your time.
We have, go ahead. Yes, sir.
Okay. I wanted to say that I do not support the moving of the school, the relocating, the selling. I speak only with the community because that's what my job is. I work with the community as a mechanic, and the community's general consensus is that they do not want the port altogether. And one other main concern is that vessels of this size, something reminds me of what happened in the Baltimore Bridge. A vessel lost power and collapsed the bridge by running into a pylon. What if a vessel of this size was to lose power and poke a hole in a levee in St. Bernard Parish while people were sleeping? It's just a dangerous thing. It's a tight-knit community. It doesn't belong here. It's a bad fit. I think it would be better fit in Plaquemine Parish altogether.
Appreciate your
Thank you.
testimony today, Mr. McCloskey. Thank you. We still have 4 more cards present wishing to speak in opposition. I think we've gotten into quite a bit of the debate on the school board, so let's try not to be redundant in our comments. Present wishing to speak, Henry Carroll, Travis London, Carly Creason. Please introduce yourself for the record.
Do you want me to go first? Hi, my name is Carly Creason. I am a school board member in St. Bernard Parish representing District 6. I had written out some notes to speak about today, but I think most of what I was going to say has been covered by our superintendent, district attorney, and other school board members that have already spoken. I think I can reiterate that the school board members, our school board, our superintendent, we are united in how we feel about this issue. I think there has been some comments about how this project is about a road. It's not about the lit project, but you can't have one without the other. The road is unnecessary if the lit project cannot proceed. And, as previously indicated, the Port of New Orleans has been less than transparent and has made multiple misrepresentations about their intentions in this project in general. I think that this issue before you today is premature. There haven't been any permits issued. There is a school sitting in the middle of the terminal, even though the depictions that the Port of New Orleans would give you would indicate otherwise. I think it's premature to discuss this issue, and I would appreciate you guys' support in opposition of House Bill 616. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Please introduce yourself for the record.
My name's Henry Carroll. I'm a resident of Muro and Violet, Louisiana. Currently live in Violet, a block away from where this LIT terminal is to be built, supposedly. I was trying to understand how I could address the roadway without bringing up LIT after I received a copy of the adjusted bill from what was presented last week. My comments to Mr. Wright, he's not our representative. I don't think he had any business personally submitting a bill pertaining to another parish and where we have our own Representative Mr. Bayham and Mr. Owen from Slidell, our Senator, Mr. Owen. I think he should be reprimanded. I don't know the procedure of submitting the bill in somebody else's district. He's never approached anybody that I know of in St. Bernard Parish to discuss this project. I do know a few years back, the Port of New Orleans was courting the St. Tammany Corporation, which is the economic development program of St. Tammany Parish, to change the zoning on some land off of I-12. Where he was involved in that or not, I don't know. But they were looking to have a distribution center and a staging area for all these trucks to be coming out of the LIT port. It was all planned. It's been planned for years. And I think it's bad business for one representative in the district making laws or attempting to make laws or change the law to benefit a certain entity of the state government. There's no tax revenue going to come out of this for St. Bernard Parish. You can research the law where the assessor in New Orleans 2 to 3 times attempted to collect tax revenue from the Port of New Orleans, and to my knowledge has never accomplished anything. Y'all know more about that than me, I'm sure. And the other thing I have a question is the Port of New Orleans trying to take over the Transportation Department, the DOT. It looks very plain to me they'd like to get their hands on it, like they do everything else. I didn't want to bring up any comments, but I have a letter. You should be aware that there has not been a permit issued for the LIT project. Like I said, it was supposed to be for the road. I'm against the road because it leads to the LIT. And the problem that they have, we're having a public meeting in St. Bernard Parish on May the 27th with the Corps of Engineers. The first public meeting the Corps has had nerve enough to come and talk to us or explain what their permitting process has got to be. But at the present, all of this bull here is unnecessary because there's no permits been issued for anything. And as far as the school board, Ms. Boucher and all the people involved, the members of the school board, they were in the dark as much as the rest of the people and the citizens in the parish when that bill went down. To give you a comment on if somebody asked if the school board offered a site. Let me read you what's on the Port Nolas brochure pertaining to the school. There's a diagram of the school in the middle of the property. I've even had port personnel say, we'll build around it. You know? But this is where there's been no input with the school board. We have identified 2 potential locations. That's wrong. They first came up with 3 locations. One of them was strictly unsatisfactory. The other 2 is not satisfactory for a school.
Thank you, Mr.
And so that's coming straight from Port Nolas brochure. They emphasize the word we, meaning them. So I think in opposition to this bill, I'm asking you to vote no until some permits is issued and some of the legal lawsuits is in place is heard in court, and we may be sitting here wasting your time and our time too. I didn't feel like getting up at 4 o'clock this morning to come up here for 8.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Carroll.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
And may I have one more statement?
We have.
I think Ms. Phelps, I appreciate you calling the roll on how many opposition letters you had at the last meeting. And I think it was one for it, and all the rest of them, 20-something, was against it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Carroll. We have two more individuals present wishing to speak, Travis London and Michael Voss. Representative Phelps.
Mr. Carroll, I just wanted to say to you, thank you for getting up early and coming, and we apologize for for having you to come today, but I'm actually glad to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Phelps.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself for the record.
My name is Michael Voss. I live in St. Bernard Parish, lifelong resident. My home is approximately a couple of 100 feet from what will be the fence of this facility. Let me state outright, I am in strong opposition to the LIT terminal and the roadway. Again, as many other people for and against the project had said, they go together. You're not going to have one without the other. As some others had said, I was kind of angry about Representative Wright sponsoring this bill because I don't understand how a member outside of the area who it doesn't affect it, how this got to where it is today. But actually, after thinking about it a little longer, I'm glad he did. Just so everybody understands here, this is the first forum where we've had state, local parish residents, and local parish officials in a room talking about the LIT terminal and roadway. I hear many of the members question, no one spoke to you about this before? That's a definitive no. You can reach out to our district attorney, our parish president. To my knowledge, there's been no forum where our state rep, our local reps, and our citizens were able to get together along with the Port of New Orleans and discuss these matters. So forgive me if I get a little emotional about the whole thing. I'd also like to give you a little history on the Port of New Orleans, Orleans Parish, that is, and St. Bernard Parish. It's not been a good relationship. I could tell you many things, many instances or events where St. Bernard Parish continually comes out on the short end of the stick in dealings with the Port of New Orleans. The biggest one I want to mention, and you've heard a couple of people talk about it, excuse me, is the Mississippi River Gulf Outlet. That was also a project championed by the Port of New Orleans, was going to went through St. Bernard Parish and would bring all of this economic development. I've been in St. Bernard Parish my whole life, and I haven't seen any economic development with the Mr. Go. Zero. Again, you could talk to our parish elected officials, and they could probably give you a better background, but to my knowledge, zero. What it did do is it created an ecological disaster. It brought in saltwater intrusion and also killed several, I don't know the number, but several residents during Hurricane Katrina, allowing the storm surge to come in. I hope you give me another minute, please. What this bill does, my wife and I call it the red herring highway, because I think it does many things. The roadway is the least important. The state legislature created St. Bernard Port, Harbor, and Terminal District in the early 60s, I believe. My understanding, I could talk to the DA and verify this, there's currently a lawsuit about it. They took away jurisdiction from the Port of New Orleans and gave it to the newly created Port of St. Bernard. So why are we here today with this? I don't understand that. Again, there's litigation about that. I'll try to make this brief and finish up. A couple of folks in this meeting and the previous talked about the roadway, and we don't want to repeat the same thing that happened with the new airport in New Orleans and the roadway not being built in time. That horse is out the barn. Remember, the LIT terminal is in probably mid to late permitting process. There's no permit applied for the roadway. So logically, I don't understand how the terminal can be built and operating and the roadway be built and operated on the same day if you've already been in 3 or 4 years of permitting for one and hadn't started the other.
Thank you.
I thank you all for listening. Sorry, I'm a little emotional.
Perfectly okay.
Again, it's, you guys represent us. I think maybe, and I hopefully shed some light on that, there's been no discussions between our state, local, Port of New Orleans, and citizens in a forum similar to this, and I thank you for this.
Representative Walters.
Thank you, Chair. My question is for somebody with the port.
Okay. Thank you. Is your question for this gentleman?
Yeah.
Representative Shamahorn.
A brief statement. I am a representative that represents rural Louisiana. I understand what you're going through, okay? We're fighting the same thing with carbon capture storage. Industry comes in, they use billions of dollars as all of the monies, and they think they own the right to just go and impede on other people's rights. But they use billions of dollars as their main window to get in. It's personal people's rights is what we always have to remember that is important before billions of dollars, okay? That industry has done undoubtedly what the port has done with y'all, because nobody really knew what was going on. They went and they leased up some properties, and it was mainly timber companies that they were leasing. And then they started threatening eminent domain. So they scared a lot of the old people into signing leases. Okay? All they did was mention it. But where we're from, we have lost so much land to eminent domain that they were worried, and they didn't have any money to go hire a lawyer or anything like that. So they just signed on. Well, I just saw where a bill that would have at least gave some parishes where carbon is going to be, and I know I'm not on subject, but I'm trying to relate to both of them. Okay?
I am giving some leeway.
Okay. So there was a bill for an injection fee in rural Louisiana where they're wanting to cover up all of our they would be stranded minerals under the plume. In essence, nobody went and talked to the public. I've been to meetings with 400 people, angry people, upset. Industry won't come. They want to talk to 10 or 15, like was mentioned before, that, they can convince 10 or 15 without anything. So, and I've made it public statements before that every time I go into one of these rooms with these 400 people, I'm actually looking for a rope hanging from the rafters with my name on it, okay? Even though I'm doing everything I can to fight it. So I can understand y'all's point of view. It's kind of been shoved on you. And
the history with the Port of New Orleans.
It is. And the ports know that I do have some problems with them with their powerful outreach. So it's hard. It's hard because everybody wants Louisiana to do better, to have more jobs, better paying jobs. But we don't want it to be at the cost of our local communities and our people's rights. And I do appreciate each and every one of you and your 4 o'clock. You probably get up at 4 o'clock anyway, okay? Being a senior like at that. But I do appreciate you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me get that off of my chest, because I've sat here and listened to their stories, and I do want to commend each and every one of them that have come, and I do appreciate you.
Thank you, Representative Shamahorn. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, the board is clear. We're going to move to closing. We have some questions too. Yes, ma'am. While the author's coming back, Rep. Walters, who's your question for? Okay. I'm going to read in the rest of the cards in opposition. Present will provide information if requested: Ryan Randall, Freeman Matthews, Erica Beck, Sydney Torres, Wanda Alcon, with a C, with a K, Alcon, Joseph DeFada, and Ralph Perez. Okay, Representative Walters.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Leger.
Oh, hold on.
Can you speak a little bit more on the school issue? Can you just elaborate in terms of from the port's perspective and what maybe it has tried to do?
I'm glad you asked that question, Representative Walters. I was raised in St. Bernard Parish, went to the public schools of St. Bernard Parish.
Yeah, for the record.
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Walter Leger Jr., as opposed to Walter Leger III, who some of you know and probably respect a lot more than me, who was a former member of yours and Speaker Pro Tem of the House. So I'm a graduate of the public schools of St. Bernard Parish. In fact, I have in the past and currently, as a lawyer, and a proud graduate, by the way, went up north to college at LSU, went to Tulane Law School, went home, and I've represented the St. Bernard Parish School Board. I was appointed by the governor, by John Bell Edwards, to be a representative on the Board of Commissioners of the Port of New Orleans. One of my first concerns, of course, was, and by the way, if I could show you, after Hurricane Katrina, I was appointed the chair of the Citizens Recovery Committee that developed a long-term strategic plan for the redevelopment of St. Bernard Parish. In that document, which I can show you, is this location is designated as future port development, and the school property is in there. That was always a major concern of mine. I personally had discussions with members of the school board and the superintendent after I became a member of the school board. And this is the document. 43 members of the community. We met in a tent for weeks without air conditioning because there was nothing there. We personally had discussions regarding the development, the location of that school. My commitment to the governor and to the members of the parish. And by the way, we also took a tour, spoke to every member of the council, every elected official, to try to get an idea of what the view of what we were doing. By the way, I was also a founder of the St. Bernard Economic Development Foundation and a founder of the St. Bernard Chamber. I'm a little bit older, I think, than almost everybody in this room, but I have been, back in the 80s when I chaired the chamber, we were very critical of the Port of New Orleans because having jurisdiction for 125 years, they had never built a port. It never expanded into St. Bernard Parish, so we were looking forward to it. When this property became available, that the existence of that school was a major issue. And yes, the school board member who told you that the response that I think the port continually gave and our staff regularly gave, how much will you pay? You know that public entities can't just pay any amount. It has to be a reasonable amount. It has to be market rates. It has to be appraised and otherwise. But our offer, our discussions were always, first, identify the locations. The two that you've seen were locations that my understanding is were recommended by members of that community there. And what was our suggestion is, Walter Leger, graduate of Shalman High School, wants a state-of-the-art school to replace it. But not just me, everybody we talk to. And look, I understand a lot of people have used the school. And by the way, the district attorney, who I think the world of, is a great district attorney and a great lawyer. Once he filed several lawsuits. The first lawsuit he filed was a lawsuit for an injunction to stop the construction of the port until the road was built. Till the road was built. Now here we are, kind of a little bit on the other side. The other lawsuit filed by the St. Bernard School Board, unfortunately, as you lawyers know, we can't talk to them now because we're in litigation. So the lawyers have to talk. So though I'm a lawyer, I'm a client now. And so we are largely restricted in some of those discussions. But I know I've gone a long bit, but I have sat here patiently and listened to things that I think they all kind of told you the accurate, but not everything. You need to know we've had incredible involvement. There's nobody here more committed than helping rebuild the parish than I am. And by the way, us board commissioners, we don't get paid. I know y'all get paid a lot of money in the legislature, right? We get paid a little bit less than you.
I'll allow us to talk about carbon capture in transportation. We're not talking about legislator pay. We got to draw the line somewhere.
That was the first
we
bill
signed
my
up
son
for
made a mistake voting on, by the way, when he entered the legislature. But I will tell you this: after Katrina, as we were rebuilding the parish and the Economic Development Foundation was founded, we were the sixth fastest growing county in America. Because when you go from 0 to 1, I mean, you've increased a lot, and then to 2 and to 10. Our population in St. Bernard has continued to grow, and pretty rapidly. But suddenly, a couple of years ago, it's leveled off. Andres Dewani, who was hired by the state of Louisiana to advise the parish on the development, once told me over drinks, by the way, I guess I shouldn't have said that. He once told me, if you as a community are not growing, you are dying. And this parish is not growing today. It's in desperate need. It's got a population of, they can tell you better than I, about 45,000 today. We had 70,000.
Wait. Okay. Wait. We're going to get back to questions and answers.
We had about 70,000 before Katrina. We have about 45,000 or so now. So the growth is stunted significantly, and it's not growing. We need the jobs. We need the economic development. And this development, if you want to really find out what happens at a container port, come visit the Napoleon Avenue port. It doesn't crash and make a lot of sound. This new port's going to be largely electric, state-of-the-art, and we will beat Bama. And we'll do that for the state of Louisiana. We'll do that for the rest of the United States. I think at the end of the day, people will be happy.
I'm going to have to.
Sorry, I got a little bit off track.
I'm going to have to.
I've been listening patiently, and I apologize, Mr. Chairman.
It's okay. I don't do a good job of chairing committees.
You do a great job.
Rep. Walters.
That answered my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Walters.
Thank you.
Representative Phelps.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I may have stepped out if you gave this information. You've heard a lot about non-transparency, so whatever conversations that you've had about the school initially, why was that not done before the bill was filed within whatever time frame? And why is that contradictory to what everyone else is saying?
I'm going to tell you, as I always would, I guess I'm under oath. I don't know where I am or not. I didn't know the bill was filed. I'm a member of the Board of Commissioners now and a past chairman. I didn't know the bill was filed. I knew we were attempting to do a P3 partnership, and I thought that was just a spectacular thing. So I can't tell you about communication. I don't think anybody tried to hide it. It's just a matter of communication. We always have openly and publicly bragged about we were trying to do a P3 partnership. Now, our lawyers advise they believe we have the authority to do it now, but I think I heard testimony from the lawyers that some of the investors want specific legislation, and I believe that's why it happened. That's why it wasn't, from I understand, why it wasn't made a big deal. This was just a formality.
So if I understand you correctly, you're stating that whomever these parties were, when they started to purchase this piece around the school, this piece around the school, and as I heard earlier, then that was transparency to say we want to purchase this property around the school for no reason.
There has been, the property that we're talking about is 1,100 acres. In 2006, this report came out. It's identified there as future port development and an industrial site, at least since 2006. That's all I know about it. Now, I came on the board in 2020. We were in negotiations with the Port of St. Bernard to acquire their property on the river. And I think there are only about 5 owners that own this 1,100 acres.
Okay.
That occurred at that time. I don't know that anybody ever kept the purchase of the property secret, and it was always known. I think it was anticipated the Port of St. Bernard might develop that property at some point, but but we came into it, I think, as probably the experts in operating container ports.
So in 2006, what's your understanding was to take place?
In 2006, we were talking about economic development. I heard testimony of some of my friends 27,000 homes were destroyed. We were trying to rebuild the parish. In 2000, there's also, by the way, in this document, there is a showing of a road that would have gone down to, and it says there should be a road. We recommend the road be developed for future port development, where it identified this piece of property. That was in 2006, which was, by the way, approved unanimously then by the council and the 43 members of the committee that paid for.
So maybe I should ask this last question. As far as the port is concerned, in 2006, when this economic development project was in mind, is it your understanding that the port knew what they were going to do with it? Would it be this project?
The Port of New Orleans?
Yes, sir.
I can't speak for the Port of New Orleans.
Okay.
I was a critic of them back then.
Okay.
They're different.
Okay.
We're different today than they were then. But I think what we anticipated, I wanted the Port of New Orleans to develop it. I think what we anticipated, the Port of St. Bernard might develop it for future port development. But we knew that was, and it's in this document back in 2006, so this is no surprise. Not to anybody that was paying attention.
No, I don't think, and I don't want to misspeak for anybody, I don't think that that's the issue, that it was for development. I think the issue here is the non-transparency, and somebody knew what the project was going to be. There's been talk about a lot of things. But you answered my question. I'm okay. Thank you.
Okay. I could give you a lot more, but I know.
Thank you, Representative Phelps. Okay, Representative Wright, you're on close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, we've been here a while. Appreciate your interest in the subject, and obviously, hope you'll, vote us positive out. But let me just share something with you that I think is super important that reflects on some of the information you've heard today on both sides, by the way. Community and stakeholder outreach. There's been 5 public comment periods related to the Corps' permitting. 65 community advisory committee members have been engaged through 43 meetings and counting. Fostered nearly 1,400 connections through 9 in-person and 3 virtual open houses. 18-plus community meetings or Port Nola events in which the project was discussed. 5-plus community block walking sessions. 6 workforce development procurement events. Engaged nearly 300 community members through a survey gathering feedback on preferred amenities for the new Violet Park. 6 mail communications, 36-plus community emails to subscribers, 1,200-plus community email to subscribers, 40-plus meetings with key leaders in the community regions, etc. Attended and or sponsored 82-plus community events that were not Port Nola events. I want you to hear that, because that's the extent, and that's not everything, that the port has engaged the community about this. I get it that some people don't want it at all, and that's fully fair, okay? But my point is this. There's been a lot of charges made here today, and including some about my integrity. And quite frankly, it is what it is. This is the job we do. But I think it's important to know this is the beginning of a step in a long process, okay? And so what the port ultimately is trying to do is to simply get bids on potentially doing this. They're still waiting on alternatives from the Regional Transportation Committee. This is not, what I'm saying is, they're not going to take a shovel and go out and build right now. We have no idea. And to answer some of these questions that people have, you're not going to know until you see what the bids look like. Right? Because that's basically going to detail what will it cost, right? How could we do this alternative versus that alternative? So it's just important to keep that all in mind. And I'll close here. I appreciate the patience, Mr. Chair, committee members, but certainly appreciate you all voting positive out. Thanks.
Representative Walters has moved to report House Bill 616 by substitute. Are there any objections? Representative Phelps has objected. Madam Secretary, please call the roll. We are voting to report the bill by substitute. A yes vote is to move the substitute bill to the floor. A vote no is to keep it in committee.
Chairman Boyott? Yes. Representative Boyer? Yes. Yes. Representative Breaux?
No.
No. Representative Chasson?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Representative Dickerson?
Yes.
Yes. Vice Chairman Fontenot?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Jackson? Representative Moore?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Phelps?
No.
No. Representative Schermerhorn? Representative? No. Representative Spell?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Tarver?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Walters?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Wiley?
Yes.
Yes. 10 yeas, 3 nays.
Representative Wright, you have quite a bit of work ahead of you.
Thank you.
Best of luck.
Thank you very much.